So welcome to another Orchestra Careers Conversation. So excited to kick off this season with some really meaningful conversations. And we've decided that our mission for this year is to provide students and early professionals with the bridge they need to transition from college to career. And so this was the first topic that came to mind, is how do we move forward? How do we actually do this thing called transition and work through changes in life? So my head immediately went to two very amazing professional friends who are here with us today, Anwar Nasir and Jacob Tudor. So I'm Sonja Thoms, and I like to say by day, I'm the Vice President of Operations at the Nashville Symphony, and by night and weekend, I run Orchestra Careers with our fabulous mini team here, Brianna Owens and Sarah Davidson. So Anwar, why don't you introduce yourself?
Sure. So thank you for having me. This is my second time joining one of these, so I feel really honored and privileged that you think of me to come in and speak. So thank you first and foremost. But I'm Anwar Nasir. I'm the Executive Director of the Louisiana Philharmonic in New Orleans, Louisiana.
Thank you. And Jacob?
Hi, my name is Jake Tudor. I am the Patron Engagement and Crescendo Club Manager at the Nashville Symphony. And I've attended a few sessions, but this is my first one joining as a speaker. So I'm very humbled to be here.
Thank you so much. So we're going to dive right in. Kind of the framework for the session today is I've asked both Anwar and Jake to share a story or something that's happening now, the transition and change that they've been through or going through. And then we'll unpack a little bit about what that feels like, what they're learning, and close out our session with a time for questions. But really, what are some things we can now learn and bring into our lives moving into this next week? So Anwar, I'd love to start with you. And can you just tell us a bit about a change you've gone through recently?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm about 6 or 7 weeks into my new position here with the LPO. And it's been a fantastic transition, one, because it's a new city for me, but two, really just thinking about stepping into a new role. For the first time, I'm a first-time executive director, so that's a really exciting opportunity for me. But I've been having to think about things very, very differently now because of the type of role that I have. In the past, I've been able to be very, very focused in terms of what my specific function is within the organization. And now I have to really think about how do I support many different teams and many different functions so that way they all have the resources that they need in order to do their jobs effectively. So it's the putting on, taking off of many hats throughout the day and being able to shift from one thought to the next, which is exciting and exhilarating, but also a little nerve-wracking at times, because sometimes, your brain will think about things beyond, if you have an hour-long meeting, your brain just doesn't stop right after that meeting. You kind of just start thinking through like, okay, well, did I get everything that I need to get accomplished done? Did I answer everyone's questions? Are there going to be things that are going to come up now that we've, decided on a path forward? So it's been really, really fascinating for me to dig in and tap into new skill sets for myself, to think about how do I show up in the best possible way, day in and day out for work. So the immediate challenge for me is really just trying to get acclimated for things and what I need to get done in an organized way and do it quickly. Obviously, it's not like we can say, all right, well, we're going to stop and we're going to get you all caught up to speed on things, and then we're going to keep going. It's kind of like I'm hitching on the back of a rocket ship, trying to get prepared for the start of the season, really make sure that everyone has what they need, that they're thinking about things, a little bit further down, so then that way we can balance things out. But I'm also still having to go through that learning process of still got to get to know everyone's name. I got to get to know where the bathrooms are. I got to get to know how do we do things. So I'm constantly in question asking mode and really trying to understand, okay, well, why do we make these decisions? Why are we where we are? How can I support you? And not just jump down and say, I can fix this right away for everyone. I'm trying to be very intentional with really understanding the thought process and how we arrived at certain things and made certain decisions, and really just make sure that they have what they need in order to do it. So for me, it's a very internal process, but also a very external thing, because I have to show up every day and I have to prove things, and I can't just hole up in my office and then just like try to be a sponge as much as possible. I have to, be out in front of everyone and really connecting with people. I'm in the office and out of the office. So I'm using all of the skills rolled up into one. So yeah.
Well, as you're talking, I feel like it must be exhausting, number one. And also, I'm glad you used the word internal, because it felt like you're thinking a lot, you're having to reflect a lot, you're having to, and I guess I imagine what it's like to be an executive director is that you're alone and you're making these decisions, and there's a lot of responsibility that is really falling onto your plate. So I guess talking a little bit more about that internal dialogue that you're having with yourself, who else do you get to reach out to during this time? Like how much isolation or reaching out do you feel like you can do right now?
Sure. So I think about it in two ways. One, there's obviously I have a great senior team here, and our team is relatively small. There's about 16 of us on the whole staff right now. But I have some very helpful internal partners, and by internal, I'm talking about primarily the staff, that I can say, help me understand this. When you're, where are you struggling with things? What can I do to help you? And this is what I'm observing. Is this correct? So I have to be very frank, upfront, and honest with them, so then that way they can do the same with me. But when I start to turn the lens like external and really think about like, okay, we have our musicians that, we obviously have to work with day in and day out here, but then also the board as well. So really thinking about them they're not involved in all of the day-to-day decision-making, but they are great partners because they're great sounding boards to say, this is what I'm observing. Is this what we need for us as an organization from a strategic level? And does this make sense as a path forward? So I can fortunately pick up the phone and talk to my board chair or talk to our orchestra president or whomever it might be within those constituency groups that would help me understand from an external capacity how we can move it forward. But when I start to think personally, who I can connect with, I have a great group of people that I just amassed through my networking in the industry, going through some of these leadership programs. I went through the League of American Orchestras, both Essentials of Orchestra Management and the Emerging Leaders Program. So we are a very tight-knit group. So there are some of the first phone calls that I make when I'm saying, help me understand, what are you guys thinking about this? Or how are we gonna move forward here? Where are your challenges? So they've been a tremendous resource for me. And I don't know if I would be able to be sitting in this chair today if I didn't have that group along with me.
So Jake, we'd love to turn to you, and so tell us a little bit about maybe a change you've been through or going through.
Yeah, it has been a lot of change over the last year or so. So a little bit about me for a few of you that may not be familiar with me and my story, but I moved to Nashville in 2015 for grad school at Belmont, and I finished in 2017. So Olivia, violin performance degree. And then I actually joined the Nashville Symphony staff in the fall of 2019. And at the time, I was a gift officer on the development team. And so not too long after that, early 2020 is when we experienced the musician and staff furloughs. And it was a very difficult time for a lot of people. I was applying and interviewing for a lot of jobs, a lot in the Nashville area. And really nothing came to fruition. That was a wild time to be looking for a job. But I wanted to stay in the field. And so I started to expand my search, and eventually was offered a position on the development team at the Cleveland Institute of Music. So I relocated to Cleveland last fall. And I really came to love Cleveland. I loved my team at CIM. I made very close friendships in the area. But I'm a musician. At heart, I'm a musician, and it was my dream in undergrad to move to Nashville. And so I would visit every few months for a gig or a project here or there. And back in June, during one of my visits to town, my former boss at the Nashville Symphony, which some of you may know from previous Orchestra Career Conversations, Mary Beth Stahl, who is the Senior Director of Development, she just reached out. She's actually from the Cleveland area. So she was like, hey, how's it going? I'd love to connect, hear how things are going, how you're liking Cleveland. And so we just set up a little chat. And we started, talking about what I was doing at CIM and how things were going with the symphony, and things were looking up, and they were looking to bring back staff. And so, long story short, had an opportunity to come back. So I joined the symphony staff again full time in August, and I just moved back to Nashville last weekend.
Wow. I mean, Jake, I'd love for you just to dive in a little bit deeper. Thank you. That it was an amazing synopsis of a very, like a year of your life in a pandemic, job loss, job gain, moving, relocating. You said you just said you moved back into your new apartment like a week ago, and you're now already out of boxes again. You're a pro at moving, but can you take us back and just share a little bit about what did it feel like when all that change was starting to happen? I mean, what maybe was there a lot of internal reflection? Was there a lot of external screaming or yelling or jumping? Like what was it? What did you look like and feel like in that time?
Yeah. Well, it's long story short, it's been a very emotional year or two. It was scary. At times it was overwhelming. I'm a person who likes to have details planned, and my move, like my general move, not like actual moving, but like my moves figured out, So when I don't know what's going to happen or how I'm going to make something happen, I get super stressed, and I don't know what to do or where to begin. I often felt really anxious through transitions, and couldn't help but fixate on the challenges and the things that could go wrong, because there's a lot of things that can go wrong through all of those things. So I was in a position several times where I had to learn to trust myself and my gut, and to know that I have what it takes to make it through without the answers.
Well, Jake, maybe I'm speaking for everyone on the call. Thank you for sharing that. That was a very honest answer. And I think that'll really help. I mean, it helps me to know, I think if I think about my last year, which was actually remaining on the staff team and seeing all of my colleagues having to go through a furlough, it was scary. It was uncertain. We were charged with trying to figure out how to reemerge when the pandemic was quote unquote over, which it still isn't. And so I just really am grateful for you sharing sharing that part of your story, because it's true. It's true. And when I think about how I was responding in this last year, I was angry most of the time. Actually I go to weekly therapy, and my therapist said actually that anger is kind of the facade of many other things. And it's when you are grieving loss of job, loss of friends, loss of security, or that you feel inadequate or inferior in a situation. You just don't feel like you don't know what to do, or you have what it takes to take the next step, or fear or trauma. And so I realized that I was feeling all of those things. And if you looked at me, I wasn't displaying those things per se, but I just felt a lot of anger over the last year, and it was probably covering up all those other scary feelings. So anyways, I just feel just honored to have heard your heart through that time. It really makes a difference that we're sharing those honest parts of the story. So I have a question now, both for both of you. In those moments, and maybe Jake, I'll just start with you. How did you know what to prioritize? Like, given the overwhelm, how do you even just pick what you're going to prioritize when you're going through change?
Yeah. Well, first, is there even an answer? Does anybody know? Does anybody know the answer to this question? But I don't know. I would say the easiest thing that I've figured out over the last year or two is that you just got to take it step by step. You do not and you cannot have everything figured out. you can't have all the answers right away. If that feeling comes that you need to have the answers or everything figured out, you just need to get rid of that. You know, you need to let that go, because you are not going to have all of the answers, and you're not going to have it all figured out. That's an unrealistic expectation, and it does not serve you. But do what you can, and when you can do it, relax, breathe, take a step back. And if something doesn't immediately stick out as the place to start, then I think the best thing to do is start with the big picture. Where am I now and where am I going? And then from there, start to break it down. What are some of the obvious big steps that need to happen to get from A to B? And then what are the smaller steps that need to happen to accomplish that? And then it all starts to make sense from there. Don't focus on the small details first. I always find myself wanting to look at the little nitty gritty details. And I think that's a natural response to change and to wanting to make things happen. But really, that's not a very organized way to accomplish moving forward. I think it really comes from having the big picture and then breaking it down from there. It's much easier to manage the details when you have the big picture in mind first.
Anwar, I'd love to ask you that same question. You know, how do you even know where to begin when you're going through a new situation?
Yeah, I echo Jake's thoughts here, because it's very much like you're never going to have all of the answers. So once you let go of expecting that, then there's a newfound freedom, I think, that you can develop and start to figure out what that path forward might be for you specifically. One thing that I want to be thoughtful about and that I would love to share is that sometimes we end up in a space where we're constantly thinking about other people too, right? And how our decisions are going to impact the people around us. And while it's great to be thoughtful and concerning with, you know, the space that you take up and how you're going to impact the people around you, sometimes you have to make the right decision for you at that time. So once you remove that burden of, well, what's going to happen with the organization if I leave? Or what's going to happen with my family if I'm, a little bit further away? I tend to say, start with thinking about what's going to be the right decision for you. And how is it going to make you feel? How is it going to make you feel more fulfilled as a person? And that, to me, helps clear my mind and helps me start to get to making some of those decisions. Because once I let go of, potentially oh, well, I'm going to miss this person, or this person, the organization is they're never going to be able to find someone that could, take my place. The organization will be fine. Your family will be fine. People around you will be fine. So really just, I would say, eliminate some of those things that might be holding you down, to be able to create space for you to think, to develop a plan, to really chart that path forward, because that's always been a stumbling block of mine. And I still deal with it, even right before I made the decision to come here to New Orleans. So I think that as soon as you can get over that hump, then you're in a space where you can really create space and opportunity for you to start to chart your path forward.
Wow. I would open it up for questions from our attendees here pretty soon. I guess, is there anything else, Jake or Anwar, you'd like to share on this area of just how do you take care of yourself? And just let's linger here for a little bit, because it's like, put on your oxygen mask before putting the next person's oxygen mask on. Like, what did that look like for you, Jake, in this last year? What did you come to learn about what you needed so that you could think about that next step that you were talking about?
Yeah, so that's an interesting question, because what I would have said to that a year ago is totally different, or even earlier this year is totally different than what I would say now. Typically how I used to respond to change or moving forward, any of these kinds of things would very much be internalized and self-isolation, all that kind of stuff. I never was really the person to open up or tell people really anything. I was just a very internalized person, which is not a good way to be. I don't recommend that to anybody. But this year I didn't have that option. in my isolation of being in a new place where I didn't know anybody during a pandemic and starting a new job, I had no choice but to sit with myself and think about things. And work through a lot of thoughts and feelings about just a ton of stuff, like, of course, work and professional and pandemic and being in a new place, but also, personal things like life, relationship, all that. And so I actually also started therapy. I always thought of myself as somebody that didn't need that. That was for people who needed something's missing or whatever. But that stigma is gone. Like, I had no idea how many things I needed to work through and how many feelings I had. So highly recommend to anybody, to your family and friends aren't trained professionals that are there to help you think through things, So that was massively beneficial. And my inner circle, my relationships with my inner circle is just totally different now. When I need them, I reach out and they answer, and I can tell them my thoughts and feelings and perspective and get theirs. And usually that helps ground me. That's really helped ground me through a lot of this. So very thankful for that.
Anwar.
Yeah, I would I would agree 100%. I would say for me, one of the things that helps me through transitions is to really, I don't know, when I was, a decade ago, when I was thinking about what my career would look like and how I would get here, if you had to ask me, 10 years ago, would I be here? I would have probably laughed in your face. But I think it was helpful for me to at least know what I wanted the art to look like. And, what do they say? The path to success is never a straight line. It does this, So at least where you want to go, and be open to anything that might come to you to allow you to get there. I try to just make sure that I'm always moving in the right direction, whatever direction that might be. Like, sometimes the right direction is to take 2 steps back, or is to take 2 steps to the side. And as long as I feel like there is still movement, then I'm okay. And sometimes the movement isn't always going to be fast. It's not always going to be like a rocket ship. It just might be at a snail's pace. And that's okay, because I'm working on myself. I'm uncovering new things, that I'm learning new things about myself. And I'm still challenging myself and giving myself opportunity to make a mistake, to learn, to not dwell too much on the mistakes, but try to just learn something from it. Or if I just need to let it go and move forward. So one of the things that I really try to prioritize, especially over this past year, is just really thinking about my health too. And what does that look like for me, and how do I balance it out? So I started running, and I was never a runner. I used to hate running. So I just started running. I started running in the mornings. And when I run, I listen to, I don't know if you would call them like self-help podcasts or whatever they might be, but I listen to things that are just that are hopefully going to make me better, like a better human being. Sometimes that might be, about business. Sometimes it might be about leadership. Sometimes it might be about finance. And then other times it just might be a comedy thing that I just need, like whatever I need to have in that during that run, it just gives me an opportunity to just feel like I'm getting better, and that has really helped. One, because I just feel the difference in myself from a health standpoint, but it's like physical health, but then also mental health. I'm able to start my day fresh and clean and feeling like I have all of these wonderful ideas to go into the day. And that has given me a tremendous amount of confidence, I think, to really know that I'm taking the right steps in the right direction. So that's been what's been helping me anytime I go through a change right now.
Well, I'd love to open up to our attendees. If you want to just raise your hand, and if you have a question for Jake or Anwar about anything they've talked about or anything they haven't talked about yet. Olivia.
Thank you. Thank you both so much for being here and sharing your individual stories and thoughts and all of those things. And thank you, Sonja, for hosting this today. I have a question. So I'm at this like point in my life right now where I'm kind of in between everything. I teach private oboe lessons to like 20, 25 students in Austin, which I'm really grateful to have that for the experience and for the income and all of those things. But I really want to make a career in arts administration. I've applied to a couple of jobs over the summer, and I've done some internships at like Aspen and Brevard and over the summer and those things as well. And I'm kind of at this point where a lot of these like leads I've put in have kind of come to like a dead end spot, and I'm not sure like what to supplement my now so much free time since I'm not in school anymore with to kind of like fuel my resume and keep fueling like my arts admin like wants and needs that I feel. So I guess I'm curious like if you have any advice for that, or if you've been in a similar situation and what you've done with that.
Yeah, I can pop in pretty quickly. I have a question before you go on mute though. Do you know what aspect of admin you're looking to go into?
Yeah, so I really love like education, and I think I'd really like to work in like an education department and help create programs. I'm very interested in like diversity and inclusion in the arts, so kind of bringing classical music to people who need it the most and get more people of color and all of that into classical music.
Sure, that's fantastic. The world needs more people like you. So what I would suggest is really thinking about how do you make your skills transferable. I tell the story all the time is like how I got my first job really, in like first professional job in the arts is I started volunteering, and it was a couple hours a week, an hour here, an hour there, but it was consistent. And that allowed me, one, to just get an inside look into what it was like to work in a professional arts organization. But two, I started to be able to figure out like, well, maybe I don't like this area as much, or I feel like I could have a really good impact here. I think one of the things that I think is going to be helpful for you, especially in this time, because when I was going through this, it was a long time ago where people weren't doing virtual things. But you have an opportunity now to be able to be connected in a virtual way. You could go through and work with someone, say if you're interested in the education space specifically, there are plenty of opportunities, I would say, that you could say, all right, I'm going to go ahead and does anyone need help with lesson plan writing?
So after grad school, I finished in 2017. I focused mainly on a freelance performance career, and I did that for 2 years while working a few, odd jobs on the side. And around 2018 or 2019 or so is when I decided to start looking for a full-time job and kind of balance both the gig life and the 9 to 5. And so I actually got my first job at an IT company in town, which has clearly nothing to do with music. And really, I learned a lot of things, learned a lot of things from that experience, but was really not really what I wanted to do, And at the time I had no idea what opportunities existed in careers with orchestras. I had no clue. I, of course, with a background in music and performance and have just a really strong passion for mission-based work, I started exploring new opportunities, and I was looking at an organization in town called the Center for Nonprofit Management, which posts all of our area kind of nonprofit jobs on like a job board. And something was open on the development team at the Nashville Symphony. And I applied and interviewed, and unfortunately, I actually didn't get it. I wanted to work there, and I knew that's where I wanted to be. And in retrospect, the job that I actually applied for really wouldn't have been the best fit. And I'm glad that they knew that at the time. So I actually applied for another position on the team, and I didn't get that one either. And the funny thing is, when I was interviewing for that one, they offered me another one. And that ended up being exactly what I needed to do. And throughout that whole process, as you can imagine, a job interview process takes a long time. It can be 2 to 3 months per job that you're applying for. I really, if Mary Beth were here, it would be so funny. I really didn't give them the option not to hire me. I would email and I would call, and I was very, very persistent. And so, yeah, I'm very glad that I ended up getting the right thing at the right time, and not the other ones that I was actually applying for.
Anwar, I don't know if you had any other thoughts for Olivia.
Take advantage of being for any virtual opportunities that might come up to you, and just make yourself available, because if the opportunity doesn't connect you right away, then it will come back to you at some point. So it'll give you an opportunity to learn some things for yourself, but also allow people to know that you're available and can be of assistance to them.
Thank you so much.
No problem.
Sarah or Brianna, do you have any questions for our guests?
I can go ahead. I'm curious what you did. You talked a little bit, Jake and Anwar, about what you did after college. I'm a junior right now in school, and I'm preparing myself for any opportunities that might come up after college and pursuing those and just keeping mental tabs. But I'm curious, as you were preparing to graduate, if you kind of have had like a systematic approach to prepare for after graduation.
Yeah, I guess I can start, since that really wasn't too long ago for me. Yeah, so my master's was in classical violin performance, but I never really saw myself wanting to be in an orchestra. I love playing, but and I don't love orchestral playing. I love chamber music. So it was kind of like, what am I doing? What do I want to do? What kind of opportunities exist for me? Especially in loving chamber music. So when I was in grad school, I actually started a string quartet, and it really picked up. Had incredible opportunities to perform with some pretty, big name artists at some very large venues like the Sandy Amphitheater in Nashville or the Orpheum in LA, and celebrity weddings and all this crazy stuff. So don't limit yourself to what you think you can do. It was, and I'm still playing. Actually, I'm playing a wedding gig here in a little bit. So it's really cool how you can balance being a musician and other opportunities. And also, after I graduated, I didn't have it figured out. I didn't get my first job till a couple years later. I was working at a gelato shop in town. I was one of our chefs. I know how to make Italian style gelato from scratch. And I also worked at a restaurant. So, I've done all kinds of stuff. But in doing that, of course, that wasn't necessarily where I wanted to be, but that helped me on my path. Absolutely. It helped make a lot of connections, especially here in Nashville, where it's Music City, and a lot of musicians and creators and artists do the same things. So I just met all kinds of incredible people who really, I kind of figured out where I wanted to go and what I wanted to do. So yeah, I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, I would add that it's never too soon to start building a network. Is the big thing. I came into orchestra as maybe about 7 years after college or so. Before that, I was working in the dance world, which was my primary discipline. But I think that the network is so huge, and really making sure that people know what it is that you want. And they will start to see opportunities that come to you that you're like the perfect fit for, and it will allow you to really think about, oh, well, I never envisioned myself going in that path, but just from a conversation that you'll have with someone, and then they'll say, you know what, I know someone I know the right person for you. And it's never too soon to start building what that network looks like. And it's not just necessarily in your traditional field, but I think that it's, from your school and your community, from, just building out your group around you for people that know and understand what it is that you want to do. And it will dramatically help you just as you start to grow in your career. I would say that just about every job that I've gotten, since college has been because I was either in the right place at the right time or because someone was able to vouch for me. And of course, you still have to show up and do the work, right? But really being in a space where you can, where people are going to know what it is that you do, know that you do it well, and you're going to be the first person that they call for any and everything. And you don't always have to take, not take every call, but every opportunity is not going to be right for you. But then all of a sudden you'll start to build and say, well, it's not right for me, but you need to talk to these two people because that might be right for them. And then it just builds out this wonderful ecosystem of people just staying connected and understanding like we're all in this together and we're going to have each other's back. So that would be one of the big things that I would start to think about, is just really being intentionally building your network. And it doesn't have to be laborious, right? It could just be, hey, you got 10 minutes to hop on a call. I just wanted to check in and see how things are going, right? And then now you're at the top of people's minds. And that has helped me tremendously.
Excellent.
That is so helpful. Thank you. Yeah.
So as we kind of move to our closing section, Jake and Anwar, thank you so much. But I was wondering if you might have any kind of like final words. Teach us how to maybe navigate change better. We're going to go, that's something we can count on in life, I think, is that we're going to continue to go through transition and change. But Anwar, do you have any kind of like closing parting tips and tricks for us?
Yeah, I would say be fearless is kind of the big thing, is really don't think that any opportunity is too big for you, because there will always be someone else who will throw their hat in the ring when they maybe don't have all of the experience, but they have the right passion or they have the right drive, right? So if you have the experience, make sure that you don't forget to put in the passion and put in the drive. So push yourself forward, put yourself out there, and just go for it. And you're always going to learn something, whether it's the right opportunity or not, to make a change, but at least you're stretching yourself and you're growing. So really just push forward as best as you can, and know that people are going to be here to support you if you fall.
Jake?
Yeah, I have a handful of thoughts here. So recognize, acknowledge that change is normal. Everyone experiences change. It happens all around us all the time. It is not something to be afraid of. Why change is something that we fear? I don't know, because we experience it all the time. Don't try to navigate change alone. Oh my gosh. There are people in your life that care about you deeply. Lean on them. I read an article, or I guess actually Facebook, when I was considering accepting my offer to come back to Nashville Symphony. I got like a suggested article to you on Facebook called "Can't Decide on a Big Life Change. People who change are overwhelmingly more content than those who don't. Study finds." And so of course I click on it and I'm looking at it and I'm reading this article, and it was written by a University of Chicago economist, and he conducted this study, and one of the things that he said that really stuck out to me was a good rule of thumb in decision making is whenever you cannot decide what you should do, choose the action that represents a change rather than continuing the status quo. And there I was like, oh my gosh, am I going to make another big change in my life? Yes, I'm going to make another big change in my life. And I'm really glad that I did. So there's that. And then just the last thought that I'd like to contribute, which seems kind of out of left field, but I think it's very transferable concepts here, is that in the LGBTQ community, there's a lot of talk about acceptance versus affirmation. And if you're not familiar, it goes something like this. Acceptance means that I do not oppose or try to persuade otherwise, whereas affirmation is that I accept and support. Acceptance has to be demonstrated, though. If it isn't, that's tolerance, which is a form of not dealing with a situation positively or negatively. So where I've felt so much kind of similar thing here in thinking about this conversation is that accepting change is not enough. affirm change, embrace it. It's a good thing. And when you do, that's when the magic happens. And that, I believe, is when things work together for the best.
Wow, thank you so much for sharing, Jake and Anwar. I mean, I'm learning a lot in this conversation. And, I had jotted down some notes in preparation for this conversation. What I would even share about what I've been learning about navigating change and transition. And I think in those parts where it's just the overwhelming, like just stressful, anxiety-ridden parts of change, just really honoring where I've been, where were we? Each of us a year and a half ago. Where are we today? And being kind about where we are today. And maybe if we're having a bad day or I need emotional support cookies, it is fine. I'm going to eat my emotional support cookies. Okay. Thank goodness for Crumble. But I think honoring where we've been, what we've been through, being kind about where we are and staying open to the possibilities of where we might be going. And it's going to be maybe different than we've planned. And I was thinking through that might be parts of that might be how we can help those around us who might be going through change. Like Jake, I love what you said about change is everywhere. And maybe I'm like at a point of stability at a certain point, but someone like my friend or a loved one is going through something really hard or really scary. And so I think honoring where they've been, honoring what they've been through, being kind and just asking, what do you need? Because I think, Anwar, you were saying, just realizing what you need in the moment and just being attuned to what you do need at any given moment and honoring that. And, I think what I also realized is when someone I love maybe is going through a change, not skipping to that third step of stay open to the possibilities. It's going to be great. Like no one wants to hear that when they're going through change, but just sitting in it with folks, that's what I want is just to be sat with in the change sometimes. So, well, this has been so amazing. I'm so grateful to everyone that's come to this conversation today. This is a really important thing to be doing, which is coming together, sharing the stories that we have, walking alongside each other. And that is my hope for the attendees and also our Orchestra Careers community is that you'll find people that you can reach out to now. If you didn't have someone to talk about something you might be going through, we'll make sure that you can get connected to Jake and Anwar. But please make sure to come to a next conversation. We're going to be talking about from musician to manager. How do we actually make this transition from on stage to off stage on the career path? And so stay tuned for that next conversation. All right, well, have a great day and we'll see you at the next time.